Okay. Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, welcome. I'm excited to dive into today's training. We're going to talk about the sales process and overall the sales flow here today. And the reason I feel like it's so important to talk about this is because sales are transactions, but sales transactions are not made through one step, right? It's a process, it's a flow. There's a customer journey that goes into this. And so, a lot of times, especially when we're new in the business, we can think, I made a curiosity post and someone said they're interested and I sent them my link and they didn't buy. I haven't heard from them. How many times do you and your team members maybe get that, right? Or maybe sometimes you question, right? So, especially the colder the lead, if it's a colder lead, but it's hard enough to even sometimes get your best friend to remember to put their order in, yet alone someone that doesn't have established rapport with you. So, it's important to recognize that there's a flow and a process, and it's just not an overnight thing. And so, your job is to guide the prospect through the journey. It's also important to track and measure, right? You can't track really what you're doing, what you can't measure, meaning you need to be able to measure your progress and to track your results. So making sure that you're organizing, your leads, making sure that whether it's lists on paper, whether you're using a CRM software, whatever it is, if you're starting to convert and now especially you want to start converting more, you need to be tracking. If you're not converting, you need to know where in the process are you falling off, right? So if you want to close more prospects, you need to be able to track so you can actually increase that production and focus on closing at those necessary gaps and then improving ratios. And as we go through this, we're going to break down the 7 steps to the sales process that we have laid out. Here, I'll show you in just a second. And it's important that you follow the steps in order, right? So I know for you, this isn't going to be something that's like brand new news, right? But these are things that your teams are struggling with. They don't understand that they shouldn't be presenting before they've, asked a few questions. They don't understand that they shouldn't be asking for the close before they've actually presented or sent information. So it's important for you to recognize and understand this well enough so that you can train it as well. So let me share my screen here. And so we've got here our 7-step, was it 7, 3, 4, 5, 6? Okay, it's 6 here, I think. Sales flow here. Okay. So we start with prospecting. We go into piquing interest, discovery, which is otherwise known as gathering intelligence, the presentation, setting appointments, and follow-up, okay? So what exactly is prospecting? I feel like this is a term that we use in our industry all the time. Prospecting is finding your ideal customer, okay? And it's generating new leads. Prospecting is not, just chasing and taking down random names. Notice I said finding your ideal customer. It means you are actively scouting who has the needs, right? The demand that I have a solution for, that I have a supply for. In business, there's always, please stop, supply and demand. Okay. So if you have the supply, where are you finding the demand? So it's your job to always be prospecting. Okay. And finding, okay, who is looking for an opportunity? Who would be a good fit as a business partner? Or who is in need of solving a problem that my product can solve? Okay. And it's important to know too, how are you going to prospect? Like, what's your typical method? Is it through social media, right? If I think of when I first started in the industry, it looked a lot different than it is today, which I'm sure Kim and Janine probably had a similar method. You got your handy dandy little notebook and you went to the mall and you started meeting people and wrote down names. Maybe you didn't do that. I don't know, but that's what I was. Okay, you did it. That's how old school MLM Amway style I was trained. I had this.
I was in Amway too, you know.
Oh, you were? I didn't know that. Okay.
In the mid 90s.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I wasn't in Amway, but I was trained a very similar
Yeah,
cultures training plan.
yeah.
Belly to belly. So it was literally scheduling an hour a day to go to the mall, to go and prospect. It was talking to anybody there, right? But now it looks a lot different. So with our digital recruiting strategies, right? We're really it's all about, making connections and building connections online, but just as you would in person, right? Just as you would go up to that person at Starbucks and say, "Hey, I like your shoes." You know, I love your purse. You would do the same thing online when they post something, when you see something that attracts you to them. So know what is your prospecting method so you can get clear so that you're not trying to prospect in 50 different ways. Now, it doesn't mean that because you're prospecting online, you can't meet someone out and about and say, "Hey, they've got a great skill set." Right? But focus your energy on your ideal method. And knowing this will help you understand, where is your source pool? Where is your where are your pool of leads coming from? Where's your pool of leads coming from? So this is the first part of generating the lead process. And as you can see in this diagram here, I try to put this from left to right, but anyways, it works this way too, because essentially it's a funnel. It's a sales funnel, right? Not the techie version, but just a literal sales funnel, meaning you're taking people through a series of steps. Not everybody will make it through, and that's okay, right? But I like to look at as from like left to right because I think of like a pipe, like an actual pipeline that water flows through, right? If you need water on, let's say you turn the kitchen sink water on to wash your hands, if no water is being put in pumped from the other end of the pipe, you're not going to have any water coming out. Okay. So your number one goal, your two most important things that you should be doing daily, like the most that you'll spend most of your energy on are probably like prospecting and following up. Adding more and more new leads to your pipeline and then following up with the existing interested leads. But if you're not consistently adding new leads to your pipeline, you're not going to have people to follow up with, or you're not going to have new people to follow up with. And you probably are going to feel like you're following up with the same 10 people over and over and over again. And you're going to end up hitting a wall. And it's going to be very frustrating. So if you're feeling like that right now, the problem probably is that you're just not adding enough people to the beginning of your pipeline. And I'm going to get to that here in just a second. So um, so if you think of this like a pipe, a flow, however it is, you really ideally a good number is to always have 20 people in your pipeline, meaning there's 20 people in kind of these middle steps. Okay. So you may have people who are like in a follow-up down the road, but you've already collected a knot right now. Those people don't count. And the people who aren't actually in that you haven't really piqued the interest yet don't count yet. So you want to constantly have 20 people that you're talking to about the opportunity or the product, right? That means you're in between that piquing interest and presentation kind of piece here. So prospecting, right now there's a lot of ways, right? Whether you're using Facebook groups, curiosity marketing, advertising, even, you know, making your reels and creating awareness that way, knowing what is the number one way that you're making new connections. So if you know the number one way you're making new connections is through your reels because you're getting a lot of awareness, or it's through Facebook groups, now you can strategically hone in on doing just more of that. Okay. So how I like to constantly be adding people to the pipeline and nurture is by adding them to what I call it like a dream list. So anytime I was this morning, I'm going through my stories and I recognized somebody was sharing like an Amazon product and she was really excited. She's like a new Amazon affiliate and she's an old friend from high school or college. I don't even remember honestly, but I was like, wow, she's so excited. She had messaged me a few weeks ago too about some of my content relating to her because she's a new Amazon affiliate. And the way she was sharing her stuff, I think she was like putting a makeup on or something. I was like, oh, wow, she's got like a great skill set. She's excited about this. Immediately, I went and I pulled my little notebook. I do have a manual notebook for this part. And I wrote her name down, meaning she's on my dream list. I would love to partner with her. I would love to invite her to look at the opportunity because she's someone who I know she already understands the power of affiliate marketing on the front end, right? Maybe not the team building side yet, but she understands that. She's excited. She's got a great social media presence. So I'm not just adding just anybody to my pipeline, right? I'm adding people that would make sense. So let's see, maybe I saw a friend post something about postpartum depression, right? And I've got a product that can solve that, let's say, right? That can support her health and wellness in that manner. I'm going to now add her to my customer dream list. Okay. Does that necessarily mean I always message her right away? Not necessarily. Okay. If it's somebody that I have established rapport now, already, I can now go into the step 2 of piquing interest. But if I don't have enough established rapport, meaning I haven't really built that relationship or reconnected in a while, I'm now going to from my dream list on a daily or weekly basis, nurture that list. So that girl that I added, I sent her a quick message. I basically complimented her. And now in a few days, I'll go comment on her stuff and message her again. And then probably by Monday, if not sooner though, because I can tell she kind of gets it, right? The affiliate side. Then I'm going to go into the next steps. So constantly be adding people onto kind of your dream customer or partner list. And that's considered prospecting, right? Okay. Any questions before we go into the next step? Okay. So if you guys were on, we shared live yesterday. Right now, I'm telling you, you and your teams want to be filling your pipeline. If there's one thing you're doing right now, it's helping your team build as many connections right now, nurturing as many online relationships. Okay. Filling their pipeline with potential customers and partners. So the next phase to this is piquing their interest. Now, once you've piqued somebody's interest, they are now considered a lead, meaning they've basically said yes or expressed interest in what you have because you piqued their interest. Okay. So, so you're moving them, you're guiding those people from step A to step B. So, how do you pique interest? Well, this can happen either A, through a curiosity post if you're doing online, right? Let's say you do post something and you're like, hey, blah, 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 this worked great. And now they're messaging you like, wait, what is that? Right? That means you've gotten someone to raise their hand and say, tell me more about what you have to offer. This is when that person is officially a lead. Okay. Prior to, your prospecting list is more of a potential lead because they haven't expressed the interest yet. They haven't raised their hand yet. The other way is by piquing interest is through, individual conversations. So I like to do this when I feel it's the right time and I've maybe seen, reconnected or connected, whether that's through a phone call or through a couple of back and forths on Messenger. Now I can ask, hey, Kim, by the way, I noticed that you just became an Amazon affiliate and it looks like you're having a lot of fun doing that. Have you ever thought about doing more of what I do? Right? You guys know the lingo, right? Now you can pique their interest. Or, hey, here's one thing too with the customers. A lot of people will see something and they'll instantly be like, you should try this, right? Instead of saying something that will allow them, that's a little bit more open-ended. Because I'll be honest, I'm one of those type of people, that type of personality types that doesn't like to be told what to do. So when someone tells me you should do this, my psychologically, I instantly go like, eh, you know. So you want it to be more their idea, meaning, oh, have you ever tried, have you tried any supplements to help with that? Okay. Have you ever thought about trying, XYZ? Now, when they say no or yes, I've thought it, so say, hey, I'd love to share a little bit of information how it might be beneficial or help you. Now it can open up an educating process, right? So piquing their interest. Okay, the next step, now these can shift a little bit depending on, how you and your teams are teaching, how to support this process, i.e., for instance, if you're teaching them to get on a full sales call, they, or I'm sorry, to send a video as a presentation or a peek, that might shift a little bit, but really before you even send any video, you should always go through at least a small discovery session, right? Even if that's a few questions, and then bring back the discovery later on. So that discovery piece isn't just necessarily right here, it's also sometimes, during the presentation as well, before or after. It kind of depends, but you always should do it before you really send any resource. This is the biggest gap I see in teams all the time. It's like, okay, now I'm getting interest on my curiosity post, but nobody's buying. So again, this is why we want to track, because now we can know, okay, now we taught how to do this. Now we understand how to do this. Now we're stuck here. Okay, let's work on this. And now we can improve to converting. So the reason for that is because so often like someone's interested and they'll just send their link or start to tell them a bunch of information and kind of overload them, right? Instead, I want you to focus on a series of discovery questions, right? That you can take them through. Closing in the DMs has a process as well. It's a different process than a phone call process. So, but if you're using the DMs, for instance, to book a presentation call or get them to a webinar or to get them to watch a video, even if it's a 5-minute video, you have to build up some buy-in with them, right? Like, okay, they're commented. That's such a low risk, low buy-in action. They commented a heart on your post. Now they're a lead, but now you're expecting them to watch a video, but you haven't gathered information yet. So let's go into the discovery process, which again is also referred to as gathering intelligence. So this is where you qualify who they are and whether or not they are someone who actually needs your product or opportunity. Okay. Again, I know that you guys know most of this, right? But a lot of our teams, right? They don't understand that this is actually a qualification process. It's not just a, hey, force their link on a bunch of people, right? Walking them through the steps. So you don't want to try and sell somebody something that they don't even need. So you have to identify the problems. So before I send a video, typically I will send, and it's okay to educate a little bit, but for instance, like I have a voice memo, I use boards, and I have it pre-recorded. Now, you don't need to do this right away, but let's say you're someone who like gets a ton of interest, it basically says, let's for an example, there was a product at one point that was like a weight loss product. And people would comment, and then I would reach out to them, and it was a voice message like, hey, I saw your comment about, XYZ product. I'd love to share a little bit more. It's actually something that I've been using for X amount and I've gotten XYZ result. But just curious, what are your current goals? Like, what are you looking to kind of improve? So I have an opening question from the beginning. Then I might ask them, let's say they're like, yeah, I'm trying to lose weight for my son's wedding or whatever it is. Like, okay, cool. Tell me a little bit more about some things that you've tried in the past. Okay. So now I'm getting them opened up and talking and probably even voice messaging me back, right? And if not, I always have those that will just comment back. But this now established way more even rapport and buy-in into the conversation. They're now, if they're going to send you a voice message or spend time listening to yours and go back and forth with you, they have buy-in. They are invested in this conversation. That means, A, okay, this is someone that I can potentially guide to a purchase, right? And they're worth sending my link to now or a video to. Or B, there's someone who isn't even going to listen to my message. They said they were interested, but they're not. Now, just because they don't respond to your first message doesn't mean they're not. It's important to make sure to, like, the next day say, hey, just checking in, or make a reach out. I think that's Lena, so you can let her in and play with her. So it's important to recognize that as well. So I'd like to do a little bit more formal video specifically on closing through the DMs and breaking down that process, because I think a lot of people get stuck there. Sorry, guys, gotta open the door here. Get stuck on that process. But most people get stuck because they just don't ask a couple of those questions to create more of that buy-in. So okay, the discovery process. The other part is, let's say I like to do a phone close all the time, right? And maybe I've done a little bit in the DMs, but now on the phone, I'm going to go through more of a deeper series of questions to gather more of the information around their pains. Okay. Because notice in the beginning too, I asked them, like, what are you looking to improve? What other things have they tried? I mean, that's painful. Someone who's trying to lose weight, who's tried maybe hiring a coach, who's tried multiple avenues. You want to find the pain because now that's how you're going to present. Okay. So you should always be presenting to the lead's pain points. So we'll get to that in a second. Okay. The next phase is, it's actually mixed up here on this graphic. I apologize. The next phase is setting appointments. So we're going to skip down here. But setting appointments is one that also is used throughout the entire process, because you can be setting appointments with people to call them and pique interest during the discovery, to book a presentation. It's used throughout. But this may or may not kind of be done in the discovery or closing DMs or, prior to phone leads. It just kind of depends. This is very, very key because don't ever let somebody tell you, let me get back to you. Okay. Don't ever let them do that. The way you do that is by taking initiative first and offering to set an appointment. Okay. And the way that we do this is by asking open-ended questions. So let's say I'm on the DMs, for instance, and I now have gathered some information, and maybe they are like, hey, I even want to buy, sure, you can send them their link, but sometimes if you can tell somebody who has a huge need and maybe there's even a potential partnership, offer a time to get on the phone and help them take an order, process an order. So it's like, hey, okay, great. I'd love to kind of, give you a little bit more information and help you, give the product a try. When can you be available to chat for 10 to 15 minutes in the next day or so? I'm sure you've heard me say this a million times because I love this phrase, but there's 4 things happening here. First off, asking when. It's an open-ended question. Chat. It's non-formal, it's casual. It doesn't put the lead on a high defense guard. 10 to 15 minutes, maybe it's a little bit longer, but it's keeps it more casual. And then the fourth piece is in the next day or two. It's urgency. People buy from urgent people. Okay. So, and the last thing to this is offering times, specific times. So when they're like, oh, I could, probably do sometime today. Okay, great. I can do, let's see here. I can do 3, or I could even do 5 your time. What works best for you? Always be offering 2 times, 2 or maybe even 3. People like choices. It's our job to give them choices so that they can make a decision and feel empowered by that, right? If you give them just one time, they're like, no, that won't work. Give them options. And also, don't seem so available. Even if you don't have anything on your calendar for the next week, don't say, okay, I can do anytime today. What's good? No. Take a moment to look at the calendar and really think about it. Well, I could do, let's see, this or that. What works best for you? And another little tip is, I used to use this in booking parties all the time. So let's say you're offering like dates that are further apart, maybe, or let's say you want today, but you're offering tomorrow. Offer the date you want them to book second. Psychology proves, right? Kim's shaking her head. 80%, she knows this, right? 80% of people, 80% of people say yes to the second option. Okay. So know that going into it. So you might say, when can you chat for 10 or 15 minutes? And then it's like, okay, I could do tomorrow at this or this. Or you know what? I actually had a couple, Anthony, I had a couple last minute openings, and I could actually do today at 1 or 3. What works best for you? And again, notice last minute openings. They don't need to know that my last minute opening is because I decided to wake up early from my nap. They don't need to know that. Okay. You are busy. Okay. You are busy. People buy from urgent and busy people because they follow the action, the adrenaline. Okay, last two quick phases here is the presentation phase. Now, this is key because this is now showing the customer on how you're going to solve their existing problems that you found out in the discovery. Anthony, honey, sweetheart, sorry, you guys, so much for using this recording later. Um, I'll be redoing this training or I'll keep it up and welcome to mom life. Okay, so showing the customer on how to solve their existing problems that you found out in the discovery session. So this is why it's important, because if you don't know what their pains are and you go in and try to present A to Z and like, here's everything about the comp plan and here's everything about this, and all they really care about is, can I work this business in 20 minutes a day? Because I just need to pay for some groceries. And you give them all this information, they don't see a solution. They see way more work than they need to do. Okay. So now you can speak to the pain points and customize the presentation. And this is key. We'll go over this in the presentation phase when we get to this in the program, but this is key. And you don't want to talk, you don't want to talk about everything. You primarily only want to talk about the things that pertain to their problems there. So follow up. Now, follow up can consist of several things. It can consist of actually enrolling them. Let's say like, oh, this is really great. Okay, I'll give you an example. Presentation, if they're not ready, there is one missing. It's overcoming objections. This is part of the presentation, I guess, but overcoming objections is key. We'll go over a deep series on that. But if they're not ready to enroll, make sure you book an appointment within 24 to 48 hours. And that's by offering those times. And if they're hesitant and they're like, hey, can we touch base next week? You want to make sure to come back and say, hey, no worries. We can low resistance, reducing friction and resistance. Hey, no worries. We can totally chat next week, but I do want to, obviously do my due diligence and, make sure to support you any way I can. Could you make just 5 or 10 minutes for me tomorrow or Friday so we can just touch base in case anything comes up for you, questions or anything? And they're typically going to say, yeah, we can do that. A, they might change their mind to join sooner. B, you're just going to keep the lead warm and nurture them. So I did this with leads from last week and I enrolled one today. I have 2 enrolling Thursday. And I've been connecting with them, right? And we had a call Friday from a Wednesday call. Anyway, so I kept them nurtured versus the leads that say we'll connect in a week. 95% of them, they never join. They never do. Write this down, you guys. Time kills deals, always. But it's also important to understand that there is a process. And sometimes at the end of the day, they just do not have the funds today, or there's something external that comes up that we do have to wait on. So how are you nurturing the lead? So as a follow-up, right? If they're enrolling, how are you now following up and onboarding them? If they aren't enrolling, how are you now keeping them warm and nurturing? If they're a no, not right now, how are you nurturing them to lead them to a future potential new sales call, right? How are you maybe keeping them on a list that you still stay in touch with? Maybe it's a list you have that you go and just, engage with their social media profiles once a week, things like that. So those are the phases, right? Again, you should always be putting new people through the pipeline, adding new people through the top if you want to collect at the bottom. The biggest problem is people are like, I don't have people coming through the bottom of the pipeline. Well, the issue is you're not putting enough people into the top, okay? So fill your pipelines. All right, you guys, I hope that was helpful to understand the sales flow and the process, a customer journey to guiding more people to enrolling in your products and opportunity.